He built the hotel from scratch, but this wasn't the legacy he intended. When the reviews started, coming in, anonymous and cold, he could barely believe what they said. Guests in, wheelchairs being refused assistance, elderly patrons charged fake fees for extra baggage, handling, and one name kept surfacing in quiet complaint. Martin Lane, the concierge everyone smiled at in daylight and feared after hours. Victor Blaine, the CEO of the Grand Alohan, didn't want to believe it, but he knew something was wrong. So he packed away his name badge, buried the designer cufflinks, and stepped into the hotel lobby at dawn, wearing a wrinkled bellhop uniform and a name tag that read Leo. Martin barely glanced at him when he checked in for his shift. "Bit old to be pushing luggage, aren't you?" he said with a sneer. Victor gave a crooked smile and shrugged. "I'm just trying to start over." The smirk Martin gave him said everything. By mid-morning, the first crack had formed in the hotel's polished facade. An elderly couple struggled with their bags, clearly confused. Martin offered to help, then charged them $60 for a so-called mobility concierge package. It didn't exist. Victor knew. He designed the packages himself. But the couple, embarrassed and confused, paid without complaint. Later that afternoon, Victor watched as a young man in a wheelchair tried to access the breakfast buffet. Within minutes, Martin whispered something to a waitress, and the man was quietly wheeled to a quieter table near the emergency exit. No complaints, just quiet cruelty. But someone noticed. A boy, thin, wide-eyed, maybe 19, stepped out from the kitchen. He wore thick dishwashing gloves, his apron stained, his movements fast and careful. Ezra. He approached the veteran with quiet kindness, offered him a fresh plate, an extra croissant, and a soft word of encouragement before vanishing back into the steam. Victor made a mental note. The kid had something most of the staff had lost: empathy. For 3 days, Victor carried luggage, cleaned up messes, and watched the undercurrent of fear ripple beneath every polished smile. Staff didn't speak openly around Martin, but they stiffened when he walked by. Dana, a server, flinched once when he corrected her in front of a guest. Something was wrong. Victor placed a tiny hidden mic inside the laundry chute hallway. A blind spot. That's where secrets would surface. That night, his suspicion turned to certainty. He heard Martin's voice through the playback low and bitter. "Ezra's getting too visible. He makes me look bad. Time to make him look like a thief." Dana's voice came next, hesitant, soft. "But he hasn't done anything wrong." Martin hissed. "Exactly why it'll work." Victor's chest burned. The trap was already being laid. By the next morning, it snapped shut. A tray of food went missing. Then the bar still came up, short by $180. Martin called it in like clockwork. Security walked in. Martin called everyone into the kitchen. Ezra looked up from the sink, puzzled. Martin pointed at him. "You were seen near the register. Care to explain the missing cash?" Ezra's eyes widened. I never go near the till. I just wash dishes." Dana said nothing. The other staff stayed frozen. Martin smiled like a wolf. "Security footage places you near the bar. We don't tolerate thieves." Ezra stepped back. I didn't do anything." Martin crossed his arms. "You're done. Get out." Victor's fists curled under the tray he carried. He wanted to speak, but not yet. That night, Victor reviewed the recording one more time. Every word, every lie. He forwarded the file to the internal ethics team, marked urgent. He'd return in the morning not as Leo, the old bellhop, but as Victor Blaine, the man who wrote every value the Grand Alohan once stood for. The next morning, staff were called to an emergency assembly in the lounge. Martin stood tall, smug as ever. Ezra sat by the door with a plastic bag of his things, head bowed, shoulders trembling. Victor entered from the side hallway in a sharp black suit. Silence swept the room. Martin turned pale. What is this?" Victor pulled out his gold-trimmed card. "Victor Blaine, owner and CEO. I believe you've met me, though I doubt you remember my luggage." Gasps. Dana's hand flew to her mouth. Martin stammered. "This is a joke." Victor raised a phone. "No joke. Just a little audio file I'd like to play." He tapped play. The recording echoed. Martin's voice, clear, cold, damning. "We say the dishwasher's been stealing." Dana's voice. "But he hasn't done anything." Martin. "Exactly why it'll work." Ezra looked up slowly. His eyes met Victor's. Shock, fear, and something deeper. Hope. Victor faced Martin. "You are hereby suspended and under investigation for misconduct, manipulation, and abuse of power. Security will escort you out." Martin stepped forward. "You can't do this. I built this hotel with my own hands." Victor cut him off. "And I won't let it rot in the hands of a coward." Security took Martin by the arm. As he passed Ezra, he snarled under his breath, "You think this changes anything?" Ezra looked down, silent. Martin was taken away. Victor turned to Ezra. "What's your name, son?" "Ezra Carter," he said, barely audible. "Ezra." Victor nodded. "You're not fired. In fact, I'd like you to start training for front desk next week." Ezra blinked. "Me?" Victor smiled. "Yes. This place needs more people like you." Before Ezra could speak again, a staff member burst into the lounge, breathless. "Sir, something's wrong." The security office. Martin's badge was just used to override the back exit. "Cameras are down. He's gone." Victor's face hardened. "Gone." The staffer nodded. "And the safe in the VIP suite, it's open." Victor turned toward the security monitors. "Lock every exit. I want eyes on every floor. And find out exactly what else Martin left behind." Because something told him the theft wasn't over, and the story was just beginning. Ezra hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. He sat in the break room, still wearing the apron he was, nearly fired in, hands clasped like he didn't know whether to thank someone or brace for more bad news. Across from him, Victor Blaine stood in his tailored suit once again, no longer the bellhop named Leo, but the man whose name was stitched into every contract of the Grand Eloan Hotel. Outside the glass door, chaos moved like water under tension. Staff whispering, radios crackling, security guards sweeping through every hallway with urgency. Martin Lane was gone. He'd slipped past cameras using a master override code. And worse, the safe in the VIP penthouse suite had been accessed minutes before the system blackout. They still didn't know what he took. But Victor had a feeling it wasn't just money. Downstairs, Harold from security returned, breathless. "Sir, we found his uniform in the locker room. He changed clothes before leaving. But there's something else." Victor turned. "Go on." Harold hesitated, then handed over a small black device. "We found this wire behind the front desk console, hidden in the paneling. It's a microphone. Listening only. Looks like it's been recording for weeks." Victor stared at it in silence. So he wasn't just overcharging guests. He was eavesdropping. "Not just eavesdropping," said Dana softly, stepping into the room. "He was collecting leverage. That's why nobody spoke up. Every time someone argued with him, the next day they'd find out. Something personal had slipped to management. A misshift. A family secret. He made people afraid." Ezra looked up, pale. So it was all real. Victor nodded. He built a system of silence, and now he's using it for something bigger. That night, Victor called an emergency meeting of the hotel's core team. Not in the boardroom, in the old wine cellar beneath the Grand Eloan, where staff used to hold celebrations before. Everything became cold and corporate. He didn't want surveillance or polished speeches. Just truth. Ezra sat quietly in the corner, invited for the first time as more than just the dishwasher. Dana stood behind him, arms crossed. Harold leaned against the wall, arms folded. On the table sat the decrypted files from the recording device. Dozens of labeled conversations. Some were harmless. Others, blackmail, hidden complaints, conversations edited and sent anonymously to HR to have people fired. Martin had been orchestrating it all. But one file had no name. Just a label. Violet Guest, Night Transfer. Victor played it. It was a conversation between Martin and someone else. Female voice, disguised by a voice modulator. Tomorrow night, the woman said, the Violet Guest will arrive. You know what to do. Martin replied, Suite 11A. I'll handle it myself. But I want the usual deposit first. The woman responded coldly. You'll get your money when the transfer's complete. One night. No. Mistakes. The room went still. Victor froze. Suite 11A wasn't just any suite. It was sealed off years ago, after a guest went missing. Publicly, it had been under renovation. Privately, it was never spoken of again. Ezra finally broke the silence. Who's the Violet Guest? Victor replied, I don't know, but we're going to find out before anyone else does. The next morning, Victor and Harold reviewed every security feed, manual logbook, and guest registry. Nothing said Violet Guest. No one on record, but at 2:47 a.m., a blurry figure entered through the east entrance, escorted by a masked driver. No ID, no luggage, no camera caught the face, but a room service tray was sent up to Suite 11A exactly 12 minutes later. The name on the kitchen order, E. Carter. Ezra's. Ezra was pulled into the office. He looked confused, almost scared. I didn't deliver anything to that floor, he insisted. I haven't even been upstairs in weeks. Victor believed him, but the tray had his name, his ID tag, and a logged keycard swipe. Dana, who managed the kitchen roster, stepped forward. That's not possible. Ezra's badge doesn't work on restricted floors. Harold frowned. Someone cloned his ID. Victor rubbed his temple, which means someone inside is still helping Martin. By nightfall, the hotel ran under lockdown. Suite 11A was sealed. Victor stood outside it with Harold and Ezra, unsure what they would find. Inside, the lights were off. No sign of a guest. But there was something strange. The bed was untouched, the minibar unopened, and in the far corner, a guest phone was off the hook, its cable cut, but still faintly glowing. Victor picked it up. Static hummed for a second, then a voice whispered, He knows you're listening. Click. Harold drew his weapon. Ezra backed away. Victor stood still. He knew now this wasn't about a single employee's misconduct. This was larger, deliberate, surgical. And Martin wasn't acting alone. He was helping someone move something, or someone, in and out of restricted spaces without alerting security, and covering their tracks by framing innocent staff. When they returned to the security office, the power flickered. The cameras began rebooting, one by one, and on screen 4, the northwest stairwell, Martin's face appeared. Not live. A recording. He looked into the camera and smiled. I told you, Victor, the recording said. You're not in control anymore. Then the screen went black. Alarms began to ring. A fire door had been forced open on the subbasement level. Victor turned to Harold. What's below the subbasement? Harold looked uneasy. Just old tunnels, boiler rooms, electrical systems, and the old vault. It's been sealed for decades. Victor looked toward the hallway. But Ezra was gone. The subbasement hadn't been touched in years. It was where the hotel's original boiler room once buzzed in the 1970s before the Alohan was modernized. Everyone said it was sealed. But as Victor rushed down the emergency stairs with Harold at his side, flashlight bouncing off, rusted pipes and flaking concrete, one thing became clear. Someone had opened it recently. The chain across the lower vault door was cut clean. Fresh footprints, wet from the sprinkler. Leak led inward. He's down here, Victor muttered. And so is Ezra. Because Ezra hadn't just wandered off. Someone had taken him. They pushed through the final hallway and found what used to be the old vault room. The metal doors had been pried open, not with tools, but with a code. Inside was an old server terminal, blinking red. An outdated power box hummed softly beneath it, wires spliced and freshly reattached, and against the back wall a cot, a tray of half-eaten food, a chair bolted to the floor, shackles beneath it. "This isn't just a vault," Harold whispered. "It's a holding cell." Victor approached the tray. The food was warm. Someone had been here recently. On the wall, beside it was a paper with a single printed line. "Violet guest, transfer in. Progress." That's when they heard the voice. It came from an intercom near the ceiling, scratchy and automated, but with the same chilling tone from the night before. "You're too late, Victor. She's already left." Victor stepped closer. "Where's Ezra?" Static. Then silence. Then, he was never supposed to see her face. Back upstairs, the lobby was under emergency lockdown. Dana ran to meet them, eyes wild. "We got a message, sent directly to Ezra's phone from a hidden number." She handed Victor the screen. It was a video, blurry, grainy, and silent. It showed Ezra strapped to a chair in what looked like a moving vehicle. Behind him, black curtains, flickering lights, and a voiceover, repeating one phrase. "You're asking the wrong questions. Follow the money, not the missing." Victor turned to Harold. "Trace that signal. Where was it sent from?" Harold tapped the screen. "Not local. This came through a private satellite uplink, which means it was rerouted." Victor knew what that meant. This wasn't just hotel-level corruption anymore. Someone was using Grand Alohan as a front, moving people, secrets, and maybe worse, right under his nose. That night, Victor called in someone he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Her name was Mira Caldwell, a former corporate investigator who once took down an embezzlement ring that almost toppled Blaine Holdings. She showed up in a black coat, a single silver streak in her hair, and eyes that scanned the hotel like it was already confessing. "You were right to call," she said, "but you were too late to stop the first phase." Victor briefed her in the surveillance room, showing her the audio files, the camera glitches, the vault. She listened without interrupting. When he was done, she asked one question. "Has anyone found out who actually booked Suite 11A?" Victor frowned. It wasn't on any record. No name. No ID. Myra's expression darkened. "Then, someone's changed the system from the root. You're dealing with more than just Martin. You're dealing with someone who has admin-level access. Possibly someone above you." Harold blinked. "That's not possible." Mira turned toward him. "Isn't it? You think Martin pulled all this off alone. You think a concierge blackmailed staff, wiped footage, moved illegal guests, hacked the system, all without help." She looked at Victor. "You need to dig deeper. Not in the hotel files. In your boardroom." Meanwhile, in a dark van speeding down the highway outside city limits, Ezra struggled against his restraints. His mouth was gagged, but his eyes were wide, watching the screen in front of him. A face flickered into view. "Martin. Pre-recorded. Sorry, kid. You were just a loose end. You saw her. That was a mistake." The screen glitched. Then a second face replaced Martin's. Blurred. Distorted. Female. Cold. "He doesn't understand what this is yet, but he will. We don't hurt you, Ezra. Not if he cooperates." The feed went black. The van turned down a gravel road. Ezra didn't know where they were going, but he knew what they were taking. Leverage. Back at the hotel, Victor stood on the rooftop, the city lights stretching in every direction. Mira joined him, holding a folder. "You need to see this," she said. Inside were travelogues, company, reimbursements, all tied to one executive board member, someone who had never once stayed at the Grand Alohan, but had expensed security visits there over 20 times in the past 2 years. Victor's voice was a whisper. "Langford Rowe." Mira nodded. "Your chief operations officer." Victor clenched his jaw. "I trusted him." Mira said nothing. The next morning, Victor entered the top-floor boardroom. Langford was already there, sipping tea like nothing had changed. "You look tired, Victor," he said calmly. "Rough week." Victor sat across from him. "Where's Ezra?" Langford raised an eyebrow. "Is that the dishwasher's name?" Victor leaned forward. I know about the vault, the suite, the fake charges, the guest with no name. I know everything. Langford set down his cup. Then you know why you can't stop it. Why you shouldn't. His tone never shifted. The Grand Alolan is profitable, but this is legacy. Victor's face darkened. You used my hotel to traffic people. Langford tilted his head. We used it to relocate the unwanted, the vulnerable, the invisible, and we got paid very well to look the other way. Victor stood. You're done. Langford smiled. I don't think I am. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Every screen in the boardroom changed. One by one, the staff. Monitors showed security feeds, and all of them had gone black. A single message replaced. Every screen. Phase 2 activated. Violet has returned. Victor froze. Mira burst into the room seconds later. Sir, the elevators just shut down. We've lost control of the lower floors. Victor turned back to Langford, but Langford was gone. And in his place, on the boardroom table, was Ezra's name tag, still wet with blood. Victor didn't move for a full 5 seconds. The boardroom was silent, humming with that kind of terror that doesn't scream, it waits. Ezra's name tag sat in the center of the polished table, still wet, the plastic smeared with a dull streak of red. It wasn't just a threat. It was a message. One that said, you're not ahead. You're right where we want you. Myra's voice cut through the silence. Langford didn't go far. He's still in the building. But Victor was already walking. Not toward the elevators, which had gone dark, but toward the old staff staircase, the one Martin used to sneak to the sublevels. Down in the back corridors of the Grand Alolan, the lights flickered low. Emergency power kicked in, casting the halls in a cold yellow glow. Ezra's trail hadn't vanished. In the laundry chute, they found a glove. Downstairs, a maintenance hatch had been pried open, leading to the underground loading bay. That's where they found the van. Abandoned. Doors open. Rear. Restraints cut. No Ezra. Just a note taped to the wall above the cargo ramp, printed in the same font as before. You failed the first test. Let's see how you handle the last. Harold was already calling in backup, but Victor held up a hand. No police. Not yet. Mira looked at him sharply. They've crossed the line. Why not bring them in? Victor stared at the note. Because this isn't about Ezra anymore. This is about what the Alolan became when I stopped paying attention. He turned slowly. We let people like Martin run unchecked. We turned a blind eye when employees quit without warning. We focused on numbers and forgot names. That's how monsters like Langford thrive, in the silence between profit margins. They followed the old freight corridor to the wine cellar, but it wasn't empty anymore. Inside stood Langford, tie loosened, eyes calm, not a trace of fear on his face. Next to him was a girl, no older than 14, dressed in a hotel cleaning apron far too big for her shoulders. Her eyes were hollow. Beside her, bound at the wrists but breathing, was Ezra. Victor stepped forward. Let him go. Langford chuckled. Ezra was just a pawn. He was never the real prize. She was. He nodded to the girl. One of 6. All moved through here under Violet. Guest reservations. You saw the paperwork, Victor, but you never read it. Mira raised her phone. We have enough to indict you. Right now. Langford smirked. Indict me? For what? You have a missing dishwasher and a few tampered logs. But I have silence. And you know what that's worth in a place like this. Victor didn't respond with words. He stepped forward and dropped a small device on the ground, a portable speaker. From it came the clear voice of Langford from a hidden recording. We used the hotel to relocate the invisible, and we got paid very well to look the other way. Langford's eyes narrowed. For the first time, he looked uncertain. From the hallway, uniformed staff began pouring in. Dana, Harold, the kitchen crew, even the front desk interns. Victor had looped the recording through the PA system. The entire hotel had heard it. The silence was broken. Langford lunged toward the girl, but Ezra stepped in front of her, bruised but standing tall. "Not this time," he said. Langford swung wildly, but Victor caught his wrist. "This hotel may have lost its soul," he said, "but not its spine." They restrained Langford. The girl wept silently in Myra's arms. Victor looked at Ezra. "You held the line when no one else did." 2 hours later, the police arrived. Langford was taken into custody. Martin was found hiding in a partner hotel 3 towns away. The Aloans shut down for 48 hours, not for damage control, but to open the doors, truly open them. All staff were called in, not to be reprimanded, but to be heard. Every voice, every fear, every act of kindness overlooked. Victor sat with Ezra in the hotel garden, the only place that hadn't changed in 20 years. Ezra held a cup of tea in his bruised hands, still quiet, still unsure what to say. "I thought I was invisible," he said. "People just passed me, didn't ask my name." Victor looked at him. "You were the only one who acted like this place still had a name." He paused. "I built this hotel to be a place of dignity. Then I stopped watching. I got comfortable at the top." Ezra looked at him. "You came back." Victor nodded, and so did the truth. Mira walked over with news. The girl's parents had been found. She was safe. The others were being tracked. The system had cracks, but now people were watching, caring. 3 weeks later, Victor hosted a quiet staff ceremony in the main hall. No press, no lights, just names being spoken. A list of those who had once felt unseen, now made visible. Ezra was given the Aloan Star of Merit, not for fighting, not for heroics, but for remembering that guests are people, not profiles. That kindness isn't a gesture, it's a responsibility. That night, Victor stood alone in the empty lobby, watching the chandelier lights reflect on the marble floor. He thought of Martin, of Langford, of every guest who had come through the doors seeking comfort and found something cold instead. He promised himself it would never happen again. Then he looked up and saw a young girl in a school uniform at the front desk, holding her father's hand. A new guest. She smiled shyly. "This is the first hotel I've ever stayed in," she whispered. Victor smiled back. "Then I hope it's the kind of place you'll always remember for the right reasons. Because in the end, buildings don't carry the soul of a hotel. People do."